Welcome back to HSC AMA. I'm your host, Julia Nimchinsky, and I'm extremely excited for our event today. Happy Turkey Day, everybody's who's watching and joining us. Welcome, Christian Krause, the founder of SaaS Sales Academy and one of the top coaches on HSC. Christian is a systems thinker, was a top performer at Salesforce as an SDR who moved up to AE and overachieved quota, closing over 50 new customers and millions in new business. And Christian will lead us in a 30-minute interrogation session today. How are you, Christian, and what did I miss?
I'm good, Julia. Thank you for the introduction. Oh, I think that was a pretty accurate, in a nutshell, about my track record and why I'm here today.
Awesome. Let's just get right into it.
Let's
Lots of
do it.
questions, not a lot of time. And yeah, to all of you joining, what's unique about this one is the questions are not submitted by us, but by our attendees. So should be super relevant and exciting. Question one, how were you able to move up so quickly in the competitive AE environment of Salesforce?
That's a very good question. I think that I went the extra mile as a sales rep. So I wasn't just focused on getting the numbers done or having good relationships with people, but I actually went out and self-enabled myself with books, with podcasts, with getting coaches, getting mentors. So I was really driven to become really good at sales, not just to sell more and make more money, but actually because I was curious about it. I was intrinsically motivated to be good at this. And I think this is something that has helped me a lot.
In the tech industry 18 months ago, every company thought their TAM was endless and enormous. Now prospecting is much more important and TAMs are more realistic, focused. If my TAM is small and my product is high cost, high value, is super personalized outreach and deep research the right strategy? Sales leaders still expect over 60 calls a day, but with a limited TAM, it's hard to understand how this is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very difficult scenario and unfortunately very, very common. The only reason why sales leaders give activity metrics is because they're easy to measure. It's not because that's, let's say, the North Star to success. Obviously, sales is to some extent always a numbers game. So obviously, everything else equal, if you make more calls, then you have a chance to build more pipeline. However, I think, especially in light of, you know, changes that are happening in industry, for just as an example, Google and Yahoo announcing this limitation on spam, right? So that means we cannot just spray and pray anymore. You really have to scale with quality. So what I always tell my coaches is step one is getting the quality right, and then step two is scaling that. And there's always this balance between personalization and scalability. And I actually encourage everyone to read Justin's book, Sales Superpowers, because he explains really well how you can scale with relevancy and, like have a scalable system, but not get too caught up in like spending hours of hours in research and like weird personalization by finding out stuff that they like on Facebook and stuff like that. It's all about relevancy, business impact, and that you can scale.
What were the strategies used to get hired with Salesforce?
So I'm really not a hiring expert because I only ever had one job at one company, and that was Salesforce. And I joined Salesforce right after graduating college. I actually met them at a career event. And instead of me chasing them, they actually chased me. So I was kind of in a lucky situation. But they really sold the career to me. They're like SDR, BDR, account executive with like timelines. Not saying the timelines were always realistic or easy to achieve, but they really sold me on this vision for my career. And that's why I joined.
What was one key habit that put you in the best position to be a top performer at Salesforce?
Time management, and more particular, applying Pareto's principle, which means that 20% of your input leads to 80% of your results, which means that I actually try to eliminate or delegate if possible, or at least, squeeze them together, all the low value activities, like logging stuff in my CRM, internal meetings, internal trainings, like internal coffee chats and stuff like that, but actually maximize the time in my calendar for revenue generating activities like prospecting, generating pipeline, progressing pipeline.
We all have the same amount of hours per day. How do you leverage technology to streamline your processes and enhance productivity?
Yeah, so I think technology can help to some extent, but only so much. Like I'm not a huge, I'm not a big automation guy or AI guy. I'm actually kind of old school. I just like to keep things simple, right? Like I never have more than 2 or 3 tabs open in my Chrome browser because otherwise I'm not focused, right? I think the best productivity tool is your focus. To say to focus on one thing at a time and not several things, and just having the habit of beginning of the week, mapping out your entire calendar, like what are the activities that you have to do every single day, that can be your cold calling or your prospecting. What are things that occur one time, so certain customer meetings, certain internal meetings that you cannot avoid. And then if you have a lot of white space in your calendar, that should be a red flag. Like you should, because what's going to happen is that in your white space in your calendar, you're going to start acting reactively. Like you're going to check Slack, you're going to check LinkedIn, you're going to check your email, and then you're caught up in this sort of loop. So actually, less technology might be better. Turning off notifications, having your phone in silent mode or airplane mode, and then just focus on one task at a time.
How to progress the relationship naturally after the first contact?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure, how to progress the relationship naturally after the first contact?
How to progress naturally after the first contact? Well, I think what's important is that in the first contact, so let's say that's a cold call or a cold email, what's important is that you understand what their goal is or what their objective is or what their current challenge is. And then all of the follow-up points need to be centered around that. So every time, so this is a classic scenario of nurturing a prospect, right? You had a call with them, they tell you, yeah, we have an issue, but we either have a vendor in place or we don't have budget right now, or call me back in 6 months. But if you understand that there's something there that you can help with, then all of your nurturing touch points should be centered around that. Hey, you told me that you have challenge XYZ. Here's a webinar that we're hosting next week that could help you. Or, hey, in light of the challenge that you shared with me, I came across this interesting Forbes article. Have a look. Like not just sending them random stuff, but actually keeping it centered around that.
I'm normally a brick wall, Christian, but I'll intervene. I'm just curious, like, how do you, so the challenge that I'm seeing with LinkedIn, um, one, the reach is gone. And regardless of how brilliant your, content is, or like probably some of the most brilliant people in the industry, like Mike Kunkel, sales strategist, process guy, insanely brilliant, sales enablement. But his content is pretty much invisible, invisible in the sense of mass market, mass audiences. And then a lot of, young folks getting like thousands of likes. And sometimes it's pods, sometimes it's not. Sometimes like there are different scenarios and ways to go. But I'm curious because you're actually a professional in this, and how do you strategize with amplifying, your voice on LinkedIn? And obviously, how do you do it strategically? Because what people are doing now, they're sending you a DM with their post, right? That's what I'm saying. Like most often, they would just DM you, and it sometimes turns into this kind of thing that you've mentioned when you get like 10 posts, no hello, no nothing, but here's my stuff. Like you have to like it and you almost feel like obligated to do it. So, what's your philosophy here?
What's my philosophy?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, it's a several things. The first philosophy is like brutal consistency, right? Like I've been posting for the last 3.5 years. Not a lot of people have done that. Anyone who has a big following right now. Is it more difficult to start today? Yeah, I think. I mean, of course, LinkedIn is definitely more saturated than it was 3.5 years ago, but my reach is only going up, like it's not going down. I mean, every once in a while, the algorithm has like a bad day and then something is off, but that only happens occasionally. So if you're starting out today, be aware that this is not a 6 month thing, this is like a 6 year thing. So it takes like a lot of time. Obviously, some people are faster, some are slower, but brutal consistency is definitely, number one over a long time period. Number two is, I mean, you have to give value in the sense that you have to share valuable information with people that does not necessarily have a CTA, a call to action, right? Like you need to share something that can help someone today do their job better, sell more, be smarter, have a better life without forcing them to buy something. So you need to kind of detach from that. So that's definitely the second piece, that whenever I see someone, sharing, oh, we have this new product feature. Yeah, I don't care. Everyone has new features or launches or whatnot every single day. It's way too much. I don't care. I just care what you can do for me right now. So I'll read your post if I can apply that immediately and be more successful. And if you do that over and over, I'll have a lot of trust in you. So when you do ask for the CTA, or when you do ask for the newsletter sign up, or for the purchase, or for the discovery call for your academy, I'll do it because I've already gotten so much value from you.
How do you qualify the leads early in the sales cycle?
Cost of an action. So if you have it sounds like an inbound, it depends, right? Inbound and outbound, I think but it should be the same. The same but different, right? So inbound means someone already went through 80% of their buyer journey and is now, if it's a good lead, right? Obviously, someone can randomly pass by the booth and that's not a good lead, but let's say it's a good lead. This person went through 80% of their buyer journey and is basically now looking at you versus your 3, 4, 5 fiercest competitors. So you can apply a different rigor to this initial qualification. You can be a little bit tighter with that. Outbound is obviously different. Outbound, you approach them. They had no intention of talking to you, but you booked a meeting because, let's say, you came across some pain or potentially a challenge. In both scenarios, cost of an action is the most important thing, in my opinion. I always say COI is the new ROI, right? So cost of an action is the new return on investment. In an upwards market that we had for the past, I don't know how many years, 10 years, people are very focused on ROI. Like we see money is there, we want to spend, we want to grow, we want to get bigger and better. Right now, bear market, money is tight. So everyone is just looking at how can we save money? How can we stop bleeding money? So cost of an action, what's the direct opportunity cost of not solving this problem? So you have to demonstrate to your buyer that if they go with you, they will stop bleeding money. You will save them very, very tangible cost. So cost of an action is like, or in other words, gap selling, gap discovery is the best book for that.
What's the best way to learn more about sales?
Well, I mean, there's a few ways that I like, right? I would say the best, I'll have the decision right now because there's a lot of ways to learn, right? So you can get a mentor, you can invest in a coach, you can buy books and you listen to podcasts. So there's obviously this range of free resources and then, cheap resources and then expensive resources. And the way it works is that the expensive resource will obviously give you the highest ROI and you will achieve the result in the fastest amount of time. So for example, I invest in one-on-one coaching with Justin Michael, which I did early in the year. For me, that was very expensive, but I had a huge ROI in like an extremely short amount of time because Justin is just a genius. Um, could I have waited and just read both of Justin's books, which just launched, which are very affordable? That would have also helped me a lot, but there would be no guidance with regards to the implementation. I would have to try everything that I learned myself. And same with like a podcast. If I go for a walk and I listen to a podcast, it's obviously for free, might be a little bit entertaining, and then I can try to apply that. So it depends on you and your personal situation. If you're poor, but you have time, go with the free resources on LinkedIn and with the podcasts. If you are, you know, moderately wealthy and you have less time, go with the books. If you can afford to invest and if you want instant results, invest in a coach. Long answer to a short question.
Best openers and closers. I assume it's about like the content side of things, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Openers and closers sounds like a cold call
Yeah.
scenario, right? So for me, the best openers are trigger-based openers. Hey, Julia, I'm calling because I saw you launched an AMA session today. How are you handling your webinar traffic? Or how are you targeting your webinar audience, right? So because I'm saying, hey, you're doing this thing today, it's like instantly relevant, right? I don't like permission-based openers. Hey, Julia, this is Christian. Do you have 28.5 seconds to allow me to share with you, and you're like, no. So I like a trigger opener, referring to a piece of research that you've seen. This can be very fast. This shouldn't take you a lot of time. And then closers. So a closer, I think a strong close is obviously trying to book the meeting and then selling the value of the meeting. And once you have that in the calendar, reaffirming kind of like an upfront contract. Hey, Julia, thanks so much for the quick conversation. We have 2 p.m. next Friday penciled in. The reason why we're going to have this conversation is to help you target your webinar audience better, to sort of like finish the call strong. And that makes the meeting a little bit more sticky.
What is the best way to educate yourself on how to sell to CFOs in the downturn of the economy?
Yeah, that's a good point. Selling to CFOs. So to be very honest, like I am not the most experienced person selling to CFOs because I typically sold to sales leaders, and in my days, the session wasn't that much advanced yet. So I don't have like the most experience selling to CFOs. However, I think enabling yourself on how to do business cases, how to demonstrate ROI, and the business acumen behind it. I think one resource that comes to mind is Fluent. So I think Fluent is a software platform that has a lot of sales enablement content around building business cases. It's spelled Fluint. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Secret sauce of closing deals.
A strong mutual action plan. A strong mutual action plan, which means that right after the initial discovery, from then on, you basically build a mutual project plan of how you get the customer from point A to point B. And the way you do this is, first of all, you establish cost of an action. That's the most important thing. you establish a compelling event, which is a time horizon for when we want to achieve the goal of taking the cost of an action away, eliminating that with your solution, and then basically reverse engineering a timeline for user onboarding and change management, technical implementation, and then the actual sales cycle itself. And then what you do there is you establish a signature date. So a signature date, a contractual signature date, you establish that, and then you reverse engineer all of the meetings of the sales cycle that are necessary, based on the best practice in your company. And obviously you need to overlap that with the buyer cycle, because whatever you have in mind for the ideal sales cycle is probably not the ideal buyer cycle. So finding the greatest common denominator there. And when you have a strong mutual action plan, that's how you close deals, because you get commitment from the buyer. I just said this really quickly and it sounds really easy. It's not, and it's also not happening in 5 minutes. It's something that you build over meetings and meetings and meetings, but that's of course, it's not discounts, right? At the end of the quarter, it's a mutual action plan that you hold your buyer accountable to.
How do you turn objections into new chance to discover?
Great question. I think Chris Voss is obviously the school of thought here. So, labeling an objection. So labeling means that, for example, customer says, I'm not interested. That's not an objection. That's just, I don't know what that is. It's an expression. So the technique of labeling means that you paraphrase what you've just heard, but you kind of put your own angle on it, your own assumption. And you do it in the way that the customer corrects you. So that technique is called reverse selling. So it's kind of several things in one, but the way you can label the objection, I'm not interested, would be, for example, it sounds like you've already solved this problem. I would love to know how you did it, because I speak to so many people like you and they struggle with this, right? So my label is like, it sounds like you've already solved this problem. Obviously, I'm making a big assumption here. And then typically what happens is the prospect will correct you and be like, well, we haven't solved it completely yet, but, and then comes another objection. And then you can apply labeling again. And this is kind of how you keep a conversation going when someone says no. And I think Marcus Chan says this in his book. If you can overcome 5 no's, you can book a meeting, like regardless of anything else.
As someone who is cold calling every day, what is your advice to get more meetings?
Have like a really good lead list prepared. So it doesn't matter if you make dials and dials and dials and your data quality is not good, your contact information is not good, you don't have research insights in there. I would say on a weekly basis, prepare like a really good list. I mean, this list needs to be aligned also with your quota attainment plan and your weekly meeting target. But let's say you have a list of 50 leads for the week. Make sure that these leads are validated, make sure that you have good contact information, and make sure that for every single one, you have at least a one-liner of research or personalization that'll help you have a strong opening in the call.
How would you acquire and engage sellers at scale for your PLG sales tech product?
Can you repeat that, please? That was a lot.
Sure. How would you acquire and engage sellers at scale for your PLG sales tech product?
What's a POG sales product?
Product-led growth.
PLG for a
Yep.
product-led. Okay.
Growth sales tech product. I assume it's just GTM of the sales tech. They go
Okay.
in like PLG. So how do you acquire and engage sellers at scale?
Yeah. Post on LinkedIn and message everyone who likes and comments on your posts. Form that audience.
Once you've connected with someone on LinkedIn, how do you approach them? Straight to the point, what you want to sell, or do you dance a little, get to know them, and then pitch to them the idea? It's like two questions are related, I
Yeah.
guess.
So the first thing is you need to basically connect to them as a human being, like on an individual level, casually without talking about the business, because nobody wants to be approached by a salesperson on LinkedIn. Like you have to connect on the basis of something else, like something on their profile, a recent achievement that they've had, something that stands out. It's basically like meeting someone on an expo or at an event. Like you're not gonna pitch slap them right in the face. You'll say like, "Hi, how's it going? Oh, I see, you work with this company." Like you connect on a human level, and once you have that rapport and you have a few back and forth messages, then you can come in with a value proposition.
How do you make your sale accountable? Make them rework and collaborate on marketing or product to improve the whole organization.
Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
How to make your sale accountable. And then the second question, make them rework and collaborate on marketing or product to improve the whole organization.
Okay. I mean, feedback loops, right? I think, SDRs are the front line of your organization because they speak to customers and prospects every single day. And what they hear from the market is very valuable information for marketing to create better marketing content and for product to release better features that solve the issues. So I think having a built-in feedback loop from your SDR team to the rest of the organization is super valuable.
Do you have tips for outbound?
Too many. Follow me on LinkedIn.
Any advice, tips to a starting BDR?
To start in BDR,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the phone is the number one sales tool, so get really good at the phone. That's the key BDR skill, is the phone.
What's the secret to hitting quota?
Having a quota attainment plan that has built in enough buffer so that you're actually shooting for overachievement. Because if you fall behind your plan, you can still make your number.
Master politics in bigger organizations.
Master politics. Ooh, could write a book on that, right? How to master politics. Be valuable, right? Like make the life of your manager and your director and all your leaders easier.
Have you ever lost a deal and won it again?
I don't think so, because when you buy a CRM, you probably don't buy a new one within like the next 2 years. And territories at Salesforce change every year, so that did not happen for me. But not to say that my successor did that on my behalf.
How do you collaborate with your management and marketing? We are running over, Christian. Just a couple.
Yeah,
Tell me when to stop because the questions keep coming and there are a lot of them. So,
yeah. I think I can do one more and then I have to go. So let's do
yep.
one more.
Um, boom, boom, boom. What do you find is the most effective way to coach people?
The most effective way to coach people is to give them several layers of support, because everyone needs different things. So, for example, in my academy, people have an on-demand course, they have weekly live coaching, and they have a community to support them. So everyone, it's almost like an a la carte menu of how do you want to be coached? Do you want to do self-study? Do you want to do live coaching? Or do you want to learn from your peers? Well, you can do all three, but different people will have different biases. So the best way to coach is like to provide them from all angles.
This was brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
attending on a Thanksgiving, everybody in Europe
Yeah.
and America. And yeah, don't miss out on your chance to book a one-on-one session on HSC with Christian Krause. And your wallet will thank you. Christian, your favorite quote, and let's wrap it up.
Um, forget about investing in the S&P 500, invest in the SME 500. That's one from Alex Raposi. The biggest ROI investment is yourself.
Beautiful. See you. Thank you so
See you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you,
You
Julia.
too. Bye bye.